Beyond the Wrench with Jay Goninen from WrenchWay.
Welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Wrench. I am your host, Jay Goninen. Before we get started, if you've enjoyed listening to Beyond the Wrench, be sure to rate and review this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We want to thank you all for listening, and we truly appreciate all of your support. Today, I have with me Craig Zale, who's the CEO of Craig's Car Care. Craig, how are you doing today?
Doing good today, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Craig, you are one of my favorite people in the industry in terms of watching the videos that you've put out and being able to kind of paint an accurate picture of who you are as a shop. So I'm really excited to have you on today. But as we get started here, I want to know, how did you get started? How did you get into the automotive business?
How far back do you want to go?
Let's go back to the start.
To the beginning. Let's see, like 13 years old. I think Dad came in the house and mentioned that his car needed some work done on it, and the valve covers were leaking oil. And being interested in mechanical things my whole young life, I went out there and took his car apart and started working on those valve covers for him and getting that done. Next morning was a little different when Dad came and woke me up and asked me what I had done to his car because he had to go to work. But I told him I was trying to help. So that's really where it started.
So did you do a successful valve cover job?
We got it done. Yeah, the guys at the auto parts stores, and this is probably must be early 1980s, and the guys at the parts stores are good about giving me a little bit of coaching, and got home and I got it done, and the rest is history. It went well.
So your family, I assume, didn't have any automotive background then?
None. I'm the first.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. And so as you were going into the career, what pushed you that? You just, when you did that job, it was something where it clicked with you?
Yeah, I think I'd kind of found a passion with the automotive side of things. I was having a good time. I had trials and errors, but as I was getting older, starting to drive, getting to 15 and a learner's permit, got a first car, hand-me-down cars, started tinkering with those, and then hot rods all through the mid 80s into the 90s, and high school auto mechanics came in, and then a technical school came and talked to our auto mechanics class, and having no idea what to do next, right? That was kind of like, let's give that a try. I was not a good student, and definitely not 4-year college material, but working with my hands I was good at, and so the technical school went well, and got into the industry in the 80s, started in full service gas stations, if you can still remember those, and with pumping the gas and checking under the hood and wiping windshields off and talking to people, and flat tire state inspections, and starting to work through the building my automotive experience all the way up to today.
It's funny how many people we talk to, whether on the podcast or in my daily conversations with shops, that how many folks started off at that full-service gas station, right? It really was a launching pad for a lot of our really, really successful people in the industry today.
I believe it. I think in today's world, it's going to be different, right? Because the full-service stuff's going away, and it's probably harder to get the exposure to the young people and to let them understand, it's changed now, and we have to approach that differently. I have several examples. The first 10 years that I was in the industry, I was working for other people as a mechanic, and then, the persona changed to technician. And that was kind of my starting point into, in 96, when I had the opportunity to start the automotive shop, Craig's Car Care. It was a ground up thing. It was just an old metal building. I had zero experience getting into the industry, and I was probably 27, 28, something like that. Oh. Then today, and I have a point here. So today, when we meet a lot of the younger, not a lot, several of the young business owners that were in their mid 20s, a lot of these young men and women are already getting business coaching experience and asking questions about things I never would have considered when I started. And I think that's just a different time now, information's easier to get, and maybe they're smarter than we were or I was back then.
Well, I think a lot of it is that the business has changed so much over those years too, right? I can only imagine from when you started the business in the 80s till now, how much that's changed from anything from writing down everything on paper, labor rate.
Right.
Do you recall, what was your labor rate when you started?
When I started turning wrenches, it was probably in the $40 an hour range, somewhere in there. And then when I started the shop, I think we were in the $70 to $80 an hour range. And of
course, you're that high. All right, that early. That's good 96. For you.
Yeah, that's 96 from that. But honestly, the new thing is effective labor rate.
Yeah.
That's realizing, you can charge whatever you want an hour, but if you're only getting, $10 an hour and that's your average, then your effective labor rate is nothing like your posted. And those are some eye-opening, lessons learned that changed everything, as far as being a business owner. But I was self-employed from 96 to like 2004, 2005 in that old rented building that I started in with really low overhead, but just running by the seat of my pants, like a lot of folks start, technician to owner. If the bank account's going up, we're doing okay. If the bank account's going down, we better, change something. In 05, when things really changed up, we bought a piece of property, had a little building on there. We built a shop on the back, and we said, hey, we're into this, into a big bank loan stuff. We really need to get some training. And that kind of started the world of business coaching and learning to run a business instead of learning to be a technician. And, Jay, I wish I had known to do that 10 years earlier, because we'd be so much further ahead and there would have been a lot less pain and strain along the way.
I hear that from so many shops, and being able to be comfortable seeking out that coaching and just fully understanding you don't know everything. There's not anybody out there that knows everything, and that's okay, right? And I think when you start to take that mindset, and one that I love about you in our conversations that we've had is that it does feel like you're constantly trying to learn. You're trying to get better in your business, and I think that is such an important mindset for a manager, right?
It has to be. The days of whether you're fixing you're working in the shop on the factory floor, so to say, the days of getting a sales presentation for a new piece of equipment, and that constitutes your training for the month or twice a year kind of a thing, wouldn't even begin to cut it today, where you really need to do some real serious training, both hands-on and classroom, at least once a month. So, and that goes for running your own business, whether you're the owner or the manager. If you're the manager and they're really letting you manage, and quite frankly, you're in control of that business's fate. You always hear the thing, you're the face of the business, but you're so much more than that. You're the lifeblood of everybody that works there and everybody that comes to you also, all your clients.
We just launched our new weekly game on Shop Talk, The Loneliest Number. Each week, we will post short poll questions on Shop Talk about industry topics. Technicians who answer the questions will earn points to play the game and get a chance to win our $1,000 weekly prize. $500 will go to the lucky winner, and the other $500 will go to a local high school program picked by the winner. Start playing now at WrenchWay.com/ShopTalk. Link is in the show notes.
Did it take you some time to get used to investing in training? And when I say that, I think technicians, when you're pulling a technician off the front lines to put them in training, I think the historic perspective of that was that, hey, I'm losing output, I'm losing money, right? Did that have to shift with you?
It did, and we're not doing the hands-on training during business hours yet, although that's coming, and it needs to for several reasons. I've always liked training for myself personally. That's I didn't like school, but I like learning new things. I think for most of us in this industry, if we're not doing new things, trying new things, of course, learning new things, we get bored and get stagnant and want to go do something else. So with our training programs now, we're doing it. We're still doing it after hours, and and that may be an evening after work, or it may be an all day, a Saturday, like a hands-on thing. And
Sure.
where we have changed is we pay for all of our people to go to training, and a lot of the training that you get is in the independent side is still geared towards after hours and weekends. So the next step we're going to take, and like you said, it's going to be a big one, to pull guys off the line, and instead of being able to send the whole shop to a full day of training, which would mean shutting down, it'll become a 3-day training event, right? Where we're taking people out. You go Monday, you go Tuesday, you go Wednesday, or maybe send 1.5 or 2 people a day, however you can divide them up to make sure everybody's getting what they need, whether it's front office training or shop training. And so all that's relevant. I mean, we do in the front, we travel and do a lot of training that's during business hours, and we have somebody else that's able to run the office while we're gone. For me, I'm pretty much marketing now, but if the manager has to leave, the way we're set right now, I go and run the front counter, and you don't want me on the front counter. So as we build our systems, we're going to be changing over to everybody's going to do training during business hours, and we're going to pay them to do the training. And yeah, we're probably going to have some kind of a production loss, which goes back to your original question. But I think I don't think there's any gray area there. I think it's something we have to do as our industry evolves and gets better. Of course, we have to charge the right labor amounts so that we not only are a profitable business, but our employees are profitable. We can replace equipment, and we can pay for all that training that we're going to have to do. Let's face it, with the EVs coming out and the new buzzword called ADAS, which has been around a few years, but it's really picking up steam right now. The investment, we're not doing much ADAS right now, but it's on our radar for next year and the year after, and we're earmarking $150,000 just to get started to do this, right? It's going to be a major investment. So our team has to be well trained to do it. We're already training some, but we're about to go to that next step, and I think we're pretty much decided that when it happens, we're going to take our people, and we're actually going to not only take them out during business hours, Jay, but we're going to fly them wherever they have to go to state-of-the-art facilities and get, I'm hearing 3 to 5 days of, intense hands-on training. And the guys that do ADOS already tell us it's not rocket science. It's not that complicated, but it's really new. And if you're a 20-something-year-old, it comes to you much easier than if you are a 50-year-old something. Our older guys are scared of this. Like when I came in, I started working in the industry, for a living in about 87. And there was this thing called OBD1 coming into the system. And it was out there. It was still new. And the guys that were teaching me that were in their 40s and 50s and even 60s were terrified of this thing. They're like, that's it. They're going to have to retire. The industry is going to collapse, and it's not going to work. And I was enthralled with it. I was rebuilding carburetors, that had, the new feedback technology in it. And it sounds funny now, but at the time, Jay, that was state-of-the-art stuff. And it was a big deal, and I loved doing it, and I was very successful at it. But the older guys were terrified, and after about a year of working in these places, these older guys were asking me, show me how to do this. And they were looking over my shoulder, and I was teaching them. And so I think now we'll be looking towards a lot of these young men and women that are coming out of their technical schools, and our apprentices that we have. We have an apprentice here at the shop that is all over the new technologies. He is chomping at the bits to be turned loose on programming. Where we program here, but we don't program that as much as we should. We still have a third party come in sometimes to help us because they're scared about what might go wrong. So the young guys are going like, I don't care, let me have it, I'll make it work. So I see in the next year or two our younger apprentices teaching our older guys the new technologies, the emerging tech that's coming out.
What a cool relationship, though.
Right?
I mean, when you think about it, and I think we talk a lot in our industry, not just our industry, but any business, about generational gaps and the communication between the two.
Right.
And I think that is such an important piece, is that if you can get your older techs to come to terms with the fact that, hey, I might just not know as much about this technology, and take that same learning mindset that you've got on the business side to be able to go in and say, hey, this kid could teach me a thing or two, like they might actually have this down, and I could learn something from them, and I can teach them something from my years of experience in a shop.
Right. And we're seeing that now at different levels and degrees. In July, my wife and I attended a expo in Vegas, and one of the seminars were all fantastic, but one of the really good ones talked about the generational gaps, as you just mentioned. And they said that we are currently in a phase where I believe they said there's 4 generations working in the industry at the same time. And that's never happened before. And I found that fascinating to think, just like you said, you got guys that are in their 60s and even 70s that are still turning wrenches and operating their businesses. And you've got, guys and gals that are in their 20s, maybe late teens, they're now in the industry. So I don't know all the different, the Gen X, Y, Z, and all the different, vernaculars for that, but it's true. And in the past, it was the older technicians and the older owners were the see all, know all, respect all people. And some of that holds true, but it now has to reciprocate from the olders having the respect for the youngers, instead of just saying, you're young, you're a kid, you don't know anything, to I better take you seriously and treat you more as an equal. And that's good on a lot of things, right? The old days of, your job, you better do it or get out, are gone. It just doesn't work anymore for all kinds of reasons that we've just talked about. But it's also about the different generations and having to lean on the younger folks that know the newer tech. So as we build all that, it all relates back to this new buzzword, which is culture, right? Until, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, culture really wasn't a buzzword, at least in our area. I don't, if you can expand more on it from everybody you talk to, right? But it's so important now, and it took me, 2017, 2018 was a pivotal time for this business, to make that shift into, culture's the word, right? It's about work-life balance. Never heard of that. In the past, it was work. I like going to work. I like fixing cars. I like fixing cars way more than I like running a business. They're both challenging, but honestly, my passion was fixing things. I didn't get out of high school and go, I want to run a business. So that's not right. This is what I am now is a learned position. It's not what I aspire to be. So I had to learn to do that. So as the things change up now, we're going to have to adapt and move forward and learn to get along and respect each other.
And I want to dive into this culture thing a little bit more, because I think you're spot on, and I don't think you're alone in the fact that not many shops really took it seriously for a long time. I know growing up in the industry, it was just kind of, get back out in the shop. Like you figure it out. But I think when people started understanding that the importance of liking the people you work with is so big, and having, having been around a lot of shops, you can tell when a shop doesn't have a good culture. Like when you walk in and there's tension and maybe not everybody's seeing eye to eye, and I think it creates a lot of infighting and not a real pleasant place to work. So I think that's when maybe even from an ownership standpoint, you could look at it and say, I want to be able to like the people that I work with, and I want to be able to come in and enjoy the people that I'm around, because we spend a lot of time in our places of business, right?
Yep, more time awake than we do sleeping, with our family. So it's Very, very true. Another word that you hear now that we never heard in the past was toxic. A toxic employee, a toxic work environment. And we're from a rough and tough industry. Right? You've been in the shops, right? It's not unusual if even in rhetoric, even in someone that you like, to get something heavy thrown at you, because you were being cocky or something. That's not really as tolerated anymore as it used to be, even on a fun sense of, shop love, so to say. So our professionalism and our level of professionalism is ramping up exponentially. It's not this slow increase. It's not this slow ramp. It's kind of almost going straight up about how fast we're having to change. And I think, I don't know, maybe the generation gap that we're trying to fill in, and the technology that we're working with, and today's clients, I think all that is kind of steering us where we need to go. It's one of those, get on board or get off. And I for us, we want our clients to be happy. We want our employees to be happy. We want everybody to have a good experience. We go so far as, we can have the most qualified person walk in, whether it's a front end or a back end thing. If when we're talking to them, their personality stinks. And I've had this recently. We've been looking for a couple of folks, and I had a guy that was quite, he was well educated. He was very qualified on paper and in experience, but in the entire 2 days of interviews, it was just negative. And like you and I talked about in the past, I'm not the guy that hires anymore. I make my recommendation, and everybody in the shop gets a vote to some point on where we're headed. The managers and the shop foreman will go to the rest of the guys and gals here and say, "What do you think about these people or this person?" And on this one person, they were, on the third day we were having lunch, and they said, "What do you think?" And they were just like, "This guy knows his stuff." But, and you could see all their faces changing and the grimace. They said, "I just don't think that he would fit in here." And we were like, "Well, what?" We already knew, but we were like, "Well, why not?" And they're just like, "I don't think he likes being in the industry anymore. I don't think he likes doing this. I don't think he likes people." Right? Because his attitude was bad. And that's written in our policies and procedures. We won't hire on just qualifications alone. And maybe it's more important now than ever that they have the right personality. And then maybe we can, whatever they lack in qualifications, we can train that.
As you're saying this, I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, that's culture right there.
Yeah,
that is how you've got a strong culture. When you can go to your team and have your team say, they can do the job, but they're probably not going to fit in with who we are. And when you can get your team to be that honest with you and be that upfront with you, that tells me something about your leadership, right? That tells me that you're open to hearing what they have to say. I think that is vitally important. But then too, like being able to come to terms with, guys, we're not just hiring on skill anymore. Nope. We're hiring intentionally. We want the right person in here. And so when we say that culture is just a buzzword, this is exactly what we're talking about right here, right? Is that it's so much more. And that's when and it helps you understand the kind of demographic or the type of person that you're trying to reach out to and find, because you'll know who fits in with the rest of the team.
Absolutely right. A lot of things you hear in business management is your client avatar. Some people say customers. We've switched over to client because people are coming to us for professional advice, and they're not just ordering a number one tune-up kind of a thing or a number one oil change or whatnot. So we have our avatar for a client. We have we probably have 10 or 15 things on what we want for a client and what fits our business model. If they're not in that thing, we don't want that relationship because it's going to be toxic. So we send them to another shop that's around us that we have a relationship with that will fit that person's avatar. Well, we have the same thing now for our employees here. right? What do we want this person to be and look like? And, it's, certifications, qualifications, good work ethics, honesty, transparency, things like that. But they got to have a good attitude. They have to be friendly. They have to be personable. They have to be open. We don't want someone that's going to live in a shell while they're here. We don't want people that are angry all the time. Honestly, we don't want smokers anymore. We don't want any tobacco use. That's not my decision. You can't smoke in the building for obvious reasons for the fire department and stuff. But the team here decided they don't want it anymore. And I never, ever would have believed that was right, because everybody used to smoke or dip or whatnot, vape, things like that. The guys and gals here don't want it. They don't want to take it home to their families. They don't want to be around it. And I thought, wow. And they said, "Is this okay?" And I was like, "Do you all agree?" And they're all like, "Yeah, we all agree." And there's like what, 8 or 9 of us here. And so I was like, you can't. It would be crazy to say, well, no. If they want to smoke, it's okay. It's almost not my right to do that, right? As I'm the owner, I get that. I make the 2, 5-year, and maybe 10-year projections and plans and stuff. But I don't work on the factory floor every day, and I don't work in the front office, and I don't control the operations. We have people in place that are much better at it than I am to do that. So they need to be the ones making these rules. And so, I find myself signing off on things that they put down where we're building our perfect employee, our perfect team member to be here. And I used to think that was so corny 10, 15 years ago, but I get it now. I see it. And it's so nice to come to work and everybody's happy. Everybody wants to see each other. Yeah, you have bad days and we have disagreements, but at the end of the day, it's nice to know that we're still friends. So it's a cool thing, even to the point of if someone's not performing right or on any level, we're going to try and help that person and try and make that situation better rather than just say, well, they can't do the job. They're not doing it. They're fired. That might come down the line. But the whole first of it is almost like trying to help a family member through a challenge, right? It could be a crisis, but it may just be, their car's not running right. Or they don't want, no one wants to work on their own car, right? So the guys will actually pull in someone else's car. Typically it's an after hours thing, and they'll get that vehicle repaired and fixed, so that's not bothering them. And I may not hear about it until a week later. And they'll say, "Hey, was it okay to do that?" And I was like, "It's brilliant. It solved the problem." So I can go on for hours about this stuff.
I have nothing to be sorry about there. No, that is phenomenal. That is the very first time I've heard of a shop internally coming up with like a no smoking, no tobacco use policy. And I think it again, going back to the culture, you've almost got a team of people that you know, like, and trust that are driving your culture and driving it internally, which I think is so much more impactful than if you were to go out and say that same exact thing. They're the people that are saying it. Those are the people that have identified who they want to work with and who they want to be associated with. And I think the world of that. I think that is such a cool thing. And I've not seen that before. That is incredible.
They're an amazing bunch. What they do. I said, everybody has their goals. Hopefully everybody's setting goals every year for their personally and their family and their teams and things like that. Everybody should have some kind of a goal to work towards. In setting ours, last year I was like, guys, if we can just get to this number and these, KPI, these key performance indicators, I'll be happy here. And they were like, yeah, okay. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm asking too much. And I got concerned that I was like, I stepped over the line. I'm going to push them too hard. And I was like, do you think, that's doable? And they go, well, we think we can do more. We think we can do better. And I was like, okay. I was like, sure. I was like, I was afraid to ask you to do too much. I'm not a born leader. I didn't go out and I've had to go to school to try and learn to be a leader. And like you said earlier, I'm still learning every single day. And leadership stuff is something I've got a long ways to go on. And to have that epiphany, to have that moment of, okay, I don't need to set their limits. I need to ask them, what do you guys want to do? What do you think we can do? How can I help you get there? How can we make that, right? How can we equip you and train you and pay you and how do we get there? And they had a lot of really great ideas that I was afraid to ask. And so now, we have goals that are going out, for many years, and a lot of those we are going to be at this number on a weekly basis for this year. And next year we're going to do it a little bit more and a little bit more. I've never been, if I can steer some of this ship, I'm driving the bus, right? The bus driver analogy, everybody on the bus, right, is riding with me. Okay. You've heard that? Okay.
Love that. The energy bus. I love that. Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to try and steer this down this road and get them what they need. And they're going to just take off at some point. At some point, I won't be driving the bus anymore. I mean, I probably will be to some degree, but I think they're starting to dictate who gets on and off the bus and helping with that. And maybe I'm not driving the bus every day. Maybe I'm going to be driving the bus, just 3 days a week, and they're going to drive it the other days of the week. And eventually, maybe I'll ride the bus and they'll be driving it, full time. So it's amazing. If you empower people, I've read that and I've heard that if you empower people, they'll surprise you, and most of the time in a good way. And it's so true. And we probably need to see more of that in the industry.
I 100% agree. I think in hearing you talk about this, I can't help but think how much more effective and how much more fun is that type of conversation to have, that leadership type of conversation, rather than coming in. I think the old school approach was very much yell and throw stuff at the wall and,
right.
And demand that you get that. Well, I don't think you're alone though. That's the way we were raised, right? That's, and it's changed so much. And for those of you shops that are out there listening that might still kind of veer that direction, I think it is really important to try and smooth that out a little bit, right? Because I think as the younger generations come up, maybe they're not as open to that type of communication. Right. I'll say, right? Yeah. I think they in a lot of cases they'll shut down, and so I give you a lot of credit for adapting because it's the way that we were trained. That's the way we were probably managed.
That was
growing
normal,
up, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things we used to do back in the day probably aren't even legal in some states. That as far as how we interacted with each other and stuff. So, but you're right. The younger generation is different in a good way, right? Yet, I get. Are we our grandfathers now, where their music is too weird and we don't understand the things they watch on the phones and stuff? Have we become that? Maybe to some degree, but I think we also have to be more open about what their ideas are, what their wants and wishes are. Not everybody working here wants more money. I've got folks here that just want more time off. They want a great work environment. They want balance. The work-life balance stuff. That's a big thing now. We're not open on weekends anymore. I thought when we stopped working on Saturdays that we're going to take this big hit. Sales went up. Business got better. I thought when we started closing at 5 instead of 6 or 7, okay, sales are going to go down. Nope, they went up. Productivity went up. Attitudes went up. Did we lose 1 or 2 clients? Yeah, but if you go back and look at those clients that we lost, they were just I just come to you for a state inspection. I don't come to you for my regular work. I go somewhere else. So, the majority of our great clients, probably almost all of our great clients, moved with us and adjusted with us. And we accommodate some people with loaned vehicles and pick up and drop off service and things that we help them work around what may be an inconvenience in some cases and stuff. So where there's a will, there's a way. And some of these ideas came again from our folks here. They said, well, let's do this. Or if we do this, can we do that? Instead of saying, nope, because I don't like it, we're not going to do it. It's more about, does it make business sense? Let's give it a trial period. And it's just amazing. And I'm sure there's folks out there, shop owners and technicians, service advisors, managers, that might not really care. They just say, just go to work, make some money. Let's survive as long as we can. If it's got to be stressful and hectic and whatnot, we accept that. But I don't think that's the majority of places anymore. I think that's now that's the exception, not the rule anymore. And I think more folks just want to enjoy their jobs more, maybe even more now since that whole 2020 thing, right? You hear about the what's it called, the Great Retirement or Resignation. Thank you, that's the word. And I think that's true, and I think a lot of people figured out you don't have to be miserable to make money. You right? There's a way. I think I just coined something there. You don't have to be miserable to make money. Right? I'm going to write that down later. So I think that's so true that we can enjoy coming to work again. As a really good coach told me, a number of years ago, learn to dream again. Don't just be in that mundane, everyday grind where you're just trying to survive. There is a better way, and guess what? If you do it, your people will be happier, you'll be happier, you'll probably live longer, your family life's going to be happier, your clients will be happier. It's all there, and you can charge more for it, and they're okay with it as long as you deliver on what you're delivering, as long as you deliver on what you're providing and giving value. And I'm not just, that's not a wish. We've been doing it for 5 years now, since we did this big changeover in early 2018, late 17, when we made some big business decisions about what we're going to do. We rewrote our business model, and that's a big deal. If anyone's ever tried to do that, that's almost like a rebirth, and it was a big deal for us. And I've been told all those years in the past, you can't charge what you need to charge for and still have great, happy clients. And I believe that because, for that, this is what, our 26th year in business, 27th year in business, and my 35th in the industry. So that's a lot of years hearing it over and over and over and believing it, and just living that not miserable, it wasn't always miserable, but just not as good as it could be. And after we made the shift and the change, it's possible. We've been doing it for 5 years. And I'll talk about labor rates and where they need to be, right? Where we're 20 years behind. Yeah. Well, that doesn't mean just to make more money. That means to have the money to pay your employees what they're worth, right? That means to have the money to replace that, 20-year-old lift that everybody's afraid to work under. That means to give people training that they need, instead of saying, I'm afraid to work on this, or I can't work on it, I have to turn it away, to, yeah, we can. And providing retirement account. We've never had a retirement account, but this year we're doing it. We're starting to kick it off right now. We have the PTO, we have the paid vacations, we have the paid training. We have a lot of amenities. We have a lot of bonuses and goals and incentives and rewards, like, free lunches and things, and free snacks and drinks for everybody. All this stuff costs money. Everybody knows this. And if you'll just bill what you need to bill, a lot of these other things will take care of themselves. And it gets better and better. So it's all possible, which is why I kind of lean back on that labor clause.
Well, and I think what you just said there was almost a masterclass on how to look at this, right? And how to look at not only compensation, but the benefits that you provide, and really even the outlook of, you want to make your people happy, you want them to work in a safe environment.
If you're enjoying Beyond the Wrench, remember to follow and rate our podcast to help support the show. Right now, we'd like to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, Sonic Tools. Sonic Tools' direct distribution model offers affordable prices without sacrificing quality and service. Their goal is to increase the efficiency of every technician with equipment solutions and Sonic phone system that organizes quality tools in ways that award every technician with the opportunity to excel. Visit sonictoolsusa.com to learn more.
How impactful, it sounds like the profitability side of this is such a big deal in order to provide those things that you want to provide. And I think there's a lot of shops out there that would love to be able to provide different types of benefits, or maybe think a little bit outside the box, or send their people to training during the day, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes profitability. And that's where I'm curious, as you talk with your staff, are you talking with them about profitability and the importance as it relates to what you're going to be able to offer them?
100%. And they get it. They as this guy, going or talked to me and got me to believe is drinking the Kool-Aid, right? The thought process of deeply believing in what you offer, what your worth is. Most technicians, and myself included, I love working on vehicles so much that if I could, I'd do it for free. But that's not the reality. And as an owner, you now have a lot of other people's lives, realities that you're now responsible for. And so it's not fair to, or probably not even right morally, to not do what's necessary to take care of them. You don't have to rip anybody off. I have lots of great people in my life that have given me great sayings. Another one is there's too much honest money out there to ever be dishonest. And it's so true. There's so much maintenance and such a great service we can provide people that you can be 100% honest, 100% truthful, give your clients cars that will, last 200,000-300,000 miles, save them all the money of not having to buy a new car every 5 years, and make an honest living for yourself and your team and your family. So it's all doable, but you have to know what you're doing. It's a shame. I think it's sad that I spent the first 10 years of my own business having no clue about that. I thought I knew, but it probably falls back on you don't know what you don't know. And it's critical as owners that we get all the training and don't stop when you think you know it. Okay, we're profitable now. Instead of, I don't know, I don't remember what the number is, but out of the 220,000 independent shops that are in the country, I think they said the vast majority of them are operating at about a 5% net profit, right? And that's remember, your net is before taxes. So if you think of net profit at 5% and then you pay your taxes off of that, you're almost looking like a business model for a not-for-profit. You may almost qualify for a 501c, which, if that's what makes you happy, fine. But if your staff is leaving, if they have no retirement, if they're going to work for a hardware store because they can make more money, you probably need to take a good hard look at your business and how you're running things. I know we did. We had to. I knew there was an issue there, and I wanted to do better. By being told one thing for so long and believing it, it seemed like getting there was an absolute impossibility. It took a huge fundamental mind shift for myself, which, everybody, no one likes change, right? Now take a business that you've had for 20 years, and we were profitable, just not very profitable. And when we had slow times or something bad happened, we had to go borrow money, to float the slow times. And it's terrible that we did that. We pay thousands and thousands of dollars of money. We always made payroll. We've never missed it. We've always paid our bills. We haven't been late on that, but we've been really close. And it never should have got to that point. So it took 2017 was a really scary year for us. I made some business mistakes trying to do some new things that cost me a lot of money. I had to go borrow money to stay in business. And that was the change. We had a coaching company in 2005 when we went from renting to owning, and we were with them for about 4 years. And what they did for us was life changing. It was incredible. And after about 4 or 5 years, we thought, well, we can't learn any more from them. We know it all. So we fell off of that for about 4 or 5 years. And if you're not learning and networking and moving forward, you're moving backwards. And that's it. It's true for anything. And so when we hit 17, I fell really far backwards trying to be revolutionary. And instead of being revolutionary, I was being reckless because I didn't have the tools to really make an intelligent decision in areas that I was playing in. It was new stuff. and that's another podcast for another day, right? But yeah,
well, I think it's definitely something to jump into, and I think when you look at it, I mean, I'm sure there's some level of having to eat some humble pie and being able
for
to
some humble pie.
You know, expensive pie, right? Yeah, but I think that again, this isn't something that is only a Craig thing, right? This is something we see consistently throughout the industry, and the value of coaching. I can't emphasize enough. If you're struggling out there, go get a coach. It might look expensive, but the alternative is far more expensive. And I think in your experience, you're
absolutely
proving that.
On the second coach that we went with, we were looking for that next level person. You know, pick up where we got stuck in the past. Let's go to that next level. And we found a company that, you know, no nonsense, very professional, very experienced. And they took us to that next level. And I was like, it's going to be a lot of money again. You know, I'm already paying loans back for making other mistakes. And now I'm at the pay for this thing, but I don't want to do it as a loan. How are we going to do it? And he comes up and says, you're going to pay for me by raising your labor rate $10 an hour. And I was like, man, we're already like I think we were like 122 then. Maybe no, we were like 115 is what we were posted. And I thought, man, and in the area, we were on the higher end of independence at the time. And so he says, raise it up. So if a lot of people complain, you can back it up. If you raise it $10 an hour, it'll pay for my services. And I thought, fine, we're going to do it. What do we got to lose? Nothing. We got nothing to lose, right? So we did it, and it started paying for it, and we had zero complaints. And so that started the thing of, hey, maybe we can keep doing this. And so we just slowly kept raising our labor rate up, and a lot of things got fixed as we started learning about a lot more KPIs than we even knew existed. You know, the key performance indicators. We started building a lot more goals. We took the little operations manual that we had, and we built a full-blown operations manual for the business. And it takes years to build. And that dictated where we wanted to go. We took our 3- and 4-page mission statement, core values, vision, all that, and we turned it into 1 page. And we said, we're going to follow this. And by following that 1-page thing, it changed everything, including the culture. And it allowed us to have the business sense to make the money we needed to provide our clients these great values like loaner cars and things like that. And it all kind of, the focus was not on making money. The focus was on making the best business possible, make ourselves the greatest auto repair shop out there, right? The friendliest, the most educated, the best place to go. And the money was secondary to it. The money just came after that. But we had to be smart enough to know where we needed to charge more as long as we delivered more. It was kind of like not self-fulfilling, prophecy, but it was a self-building mechanism by just following rules and things like that.
And I think, I oftentimes, when I look at the history of our industry, I think we were kind of put behind the 8 ball for a long time as it relates to labor rates. And, I grew up in a small town, but I know it was this way everywhere, where the labor rates in repair weren't very high to start with, right? Like it was always behind the other trades, and always, it was always charging less for vehicles. So I think we've had to catch up in order to be able to offer competitive pay and benefits. And there's still a lot of shops out there that aren't charging what they're worth, right?
We're still catching up. And two things there. One, small town. I will share anything and everything that we have with other people that don't believe it's possible, because it was shared with me. And other shop owners that were successful, that had figured it out, right, said, here's our data and here's our numbers. And I was so blown away by how opening and caring they were that we pay that forward, right? And the excuse of, we're in a small town, we can't charge this. That's not true. Back then we were 2,500 people, 2,000 people. Now we're about 10,000 people in the city that we're in of Lucas. And yes, you can. We're billing a little over $250 an hour on 80% of our work, and we're getting more 5-star reviews than we ever have. And our clients come back and they love us. And we're working in many cases. We're working on 3 generations of people's vehicles. We're not on the original clients' vehicles. We're not on their kids, but we're on their grandkids in some cases. So and they're still coming to us. So that can be done. It just takes a mindset of we need to change, we can change, and we'll make things better. It's
well.
Yeah,
and,
I was just
yeah,
the last thing. The only thing I had there is you're talking about being behind other trades, and you know me, I go squirrel, so you have to keep me reined in here, right?
I love it.
It probably wasn't. It was probably maybe less than a year ago. Maybe it was a year ago. We had a plumber come out. And he changed some bibs on the side, 2 bibs, your water faucets on the outside of the house. And I can solder and I can sweat pipe, but pulling brick out, I'm not a mason, and he wouldn't put the brick back, but he would pull it out. But he'd also solder in the wall, which meant he was also going to shut off the water of the house. And I don't want to burn my house down. You get all the insulation, and you see all the videos of firemen out there, fixing, or putting out fires after a plumber's worked, or after someone tried to be a plumber and didn't have all the tricks of the trade and stuff. So we hired somebody to come do this. And the guy he came in a van, nice uniform, very reputable company, very professional. And he replaced these 2 bibs, and he was done. It was a great job. We had to have somebody come back and put the bricks in for us and cement it back in, and he charged us $500. And he was in and out in an hour. So I don't know what even the best water bibs in the world cost, right?
It's not that much.
And he charged us $500. And his service, he was there on time. He worked with our schedule. He was clean, professional. The brick he took out, what couldn't be used, he took it with him and threw away. He didn't put it in our trash can. He took it with him. What bricks could be saved, he put in a nice clean pile. He cleaned off the old mortar that was still attached to him. He wiped off the wall where his footprints were in the ground. He kind of smoothed those over. He did things that were very noticeable, and he was very informative, transparent. And so I felt the service was so good that I was like, okay, it's $500. It's a lot of money, but okay, it was worth it. It's done. I didn't have to do it. Maybe it would have taken me 3 or 4 or 5 hours and a couple of trips to the hardware store, and maybe I would have burned my house down, right? So all of a sudden that $500 is not so much. My electrician, or let's not even worry about the electrician, the plumber, same thing, right? Most of us can fix our own toilets. If you're a technician, you can do it, right? But sometimes you get a rush, or you don't feel like screwing with it, or something has to get done. Your average plumber to come out and do anything to your toilet is going to be about $300 to $500 bill, and they're going to be there in about an hour. They're going to be there maybe an hour in and out. So they have. I don't want to downplay their equipment and their training and things like that, but let's look at what we have to do to run our businesses. What tool investment, whether you provide all the tools and equipment for your employees, or you make them buy some of their tools and their hand tools like in the past, and you provide the equipment and things and the facilities and all that. What does that cost and compare to what these other industries and services charge? Honestly, I would have to say there's probably not even a comparison. We don't. If they're working out of their house, it's really not a comparison. If they come from a brick and mortar facility, maybe there's some comparison. But my point is, why are we still charging $100 an hour? Why are we taking people that have to train and work on brake systems and steering systems and electric vehicles and high voltages and computer networks and all these things, and someone has to spend half of their work time in front of a computer, another half of the time doing some pretty advanced testing and stuff, and then you have to warranty it for we warranty for 4 years, 40,000 miles in house, and then we have the other warranty. It's 336. It comes from our affiliate that we're a member of, and I don't think my electrician, my plumber, and those guys, their warranties aren't that long, right? And so and their parts don't cost what they cost. A transmission compared to all kinds of new plumbing. There's no comparison. So I think industry-wide, we have to change so that we can provide all these other great things for the great people we have working for us, and honestly our clients too, right? Because if we can't take care of ourselves, how can we possibly give our clients what the service that they deserve?
Man, is that a good point? And that
right?
Everything you said there, I couldn't agree more with. And I think it all circles back to, and it sounds funny, but when you go back to that culture discussion that we had, we need technicians to present themselves in a professional manner. I think you could learn so much from that plumber that came out to you, and making sure that the interior doesn't have oil spots
right?
on it, and that all of that little stuff goes such a long way. How a technician is dressed, the professionalism. This is something that drives me crazy about techs, is that you go out to a Facebook, to a group, and you're reading the posts, and some of the just. And for those techs that are listening out there, you know what I'm talking about. It's going out to these groups and seeing the complainers and the ones that are out there that just bitch about everything, and they don't want to, dress appropriately for an interview, as one example. Or, it's frustrating because that's the things we need in order to charge what we need to charge to make your lives better. And the more you can represent yourself in a professional manner, whether you're a manager, an owner, a tech, even that porter at a dealership, right? The more you can represent yourself in a professional manner, the easier it is to charge what we're worth. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we need. We need that industry-wide. We need shops charging what they're worth and really understanding what they're worth so that they can provide those key benefits and those key compensation points to our technicians. And to me, that's the easiest way to solve so many problems that we've got in our industry.
It's not rocket science, is it?
No, but it's hard, right? And I think it changes hard. And I think the cool part, something that I took out of what you were saying, is that we are starting to see that change in our industry. We're starting to see a different type of manager in those seats. And maybe the ones that didn't start off in that direction are adapting and getting better. So I think there's a lot of encouragement for me in what I see in shops on a daily basis. But we still got a long way to go.
We are in every year it changes, but we are in the biggest change. This is my 35th year in the industry, and I tell people it's not just our change that we started, 5 years ago. It may have actually been a year longer than that now. Because I keep telling the same story, I want to tell everybody in the industry, it can be better. It's not a bad industry. It's not a dying industry. It can get better. There's a better way. And I like to preach that to everybody. It's possible. It's not only possible, it's being done. But we are in the biggest change. Where our industry was slowly doing this kind of scale thing going up. Again, now it's ramping up across the board, right? For the whole professionalism of the industry is changing. I think the internet has a big part of that because we're connecting more. 2020 was probably good for a lot of automotive businesses, not as far as being in business and how much business we had coming in or we didn't have coming in. It was how much we were talking to one another and how much we were talking about, hey, you know what? We have a lot of the same problems. It's not just us. We talk to people that says, if you go to school and you want to learn a little bit more, you can get better not just on how you repair the vehicles, but you can get better on how you run your business. But yet, at the same time and in the same breath, there are still media networks out there, social media stuff, where you've got other shop owners telling people, asking how much labor should I charge, telling them, and not just one or two people, but maybe 10 or 20 people saying, well, the way you set your labor rates is to call around your area and see what other places are charging, and that's and be in the ballpark. And honestly, I'm guilty of doing that. It's been 10, 15 years since we were doing that. But at one time we did that because I didn't know any better. I honestly had no idea how to look for it, and it took more training for somebody to bop me on the head and say, well, if you call around to 10 shops, do they all have the same overhead that you have, right? Do they have the same insurance? Do they have the same tool payments, the same loan payments, the same staff number, the same payroll? right? Do they offer the same things that you do, right? Are their liabilities the same? And the answer is no. Even if you find something similar, you could be tens of thousands of dollars off in what someone else, break-even number is, as opposed to what your is. And if you don't know that number, and you don't base your labor amounts in anything whether you market parts and or labor, if you don't base that on solid business training, you're just shooting in the dark. And you, in most cases, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. And that's how you end up going broke. And that's how you end up making huge financial mistakes. So, anyone that'll listen, and there's several young folks out there that are running their businesses, like we talked about earlier, that are so impressive, and they're in their 20s, and they're asking these great questions, and they're getting this great training to where they're not going to listen to bad advice from well-meaning people that they don't know either. The other people, I'll try and message them on the side and say, hey, I heard you say this, and I see where you're coming from, but this is really the better way to do that. And I don't want to embarrass anybody, and I don't want to make anybody angry, but I sure don't want bad advice to continue either. You mean well, you want to help them, but you're not helping them because you still need help. And I've been there. If you can screw it up, I've done it. Right? And those screw ups usually come with quite a bit of financial loss or financial training, maybe. If we screw something, right? If you break something in the shop and they said, oh, do I have to pay for that? No, we're gonna just write it off as a training exercise. And we're not going to build a client because we screwed it up. We're gonna take care of it ourselves. So, and that goes, and I've even goofed up a couple of friendships over the years with some technicians and managers where I didn't have the training to know how to approach a problem, and I was more of the old scream and yell, and I was so reactive, and I had zero being proactive. I saw it coming, but I didn't pay attention to it. And so it works across all kinds of different fronts, Jay.
Well, I think that's a good spot to leave on. Great advice. Run your own race. Make sure that you're doing the things, control what you can control. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. There's so much good insight from your experience, and I appreciate your candidness on your ability to adapt, and really, I think there's just so many lessons to be learned throughout this episode. So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us, and hope you'll do it again.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.